I'm Veda Peters. I work for the British Columbia Lung Association. This is the 12th annual Air Quality Workshop. And I'm here to speak with Tim Papandreou, who is the director of San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency. And we're going to talk about actively creating the future of mobility. So, Tim, what is the vision for the distant future of mobility, and what's on the immediate horizon?
Well, that's a big question. First of all, thank you for having me here, and I appreciate being invited to beautiful Vancouver. It's one of my favorite cities to be at. I think some of the big things that are happening with mobility are in the area of changing preferences, changing travel preferences. So we're seeing large demographic shifts in population. We're getting baby boomers who are entering the retirement years, who are leaving the workforce, being replaced by an even larger number of people who are under 30 years old, who are termed Generation Y or millennials. And most of Generation X, who's in the middle, is advancing in the executive management roles of a lot of these large companies. So there's just this profound shift that's happening demographically with the way that we work, the way that we consider work, and the way that we actually do work. And historically, or very recently, work meant coming to actually an office or a seat, sitting down, being present, being told what to do, producing a widget of some sort, an output. Whereas now the shift is more on working to create value and create experiences that create outcomes. So that's a very different role in terms of where you are and what you do when you come into work. So it's changing commuting patterns. It's making the availability of work to be anywhere as long as you're connected to the internet, basically. So at the same time, there's been a convergence of technologies. We've seen the rise of smartphone technology coupled by GPS technology and Wi-Fi being basically ubiquitous in many of the advanced cities. Those three things are allowing you to work anywhere, everywhere, whenever you go, and many people are using the cafes as their office places now, their spaces to work. And the third thing that's happening that's interesting with the convergence is that people are actually choosing to access mobility rather than to own their own car and to use it for everything. And so they really don't care about owning things as much as they used to. They care more about using things and actually experiencing things. So I think that's going to be an interesting opportunity to see everything that we've had in our transportation system is all about self-ownership and self-usage. And now we're moving more towards the concept of sharing these services and sharing usage. So what I think is going to be interesting is that as we're seeing the rise of, we're seeing the first time ever, especially in the US, of vehicle kilometers traveled basically capped and starting to have a bit of a decline. We're also seeing car ownership levels basically capping, and we're seeing a reduction in young people applying for their driver's licenses, especially in the central city areas. So what's happening so that's a trend that's starting to show a bit of a cap or a decline. What's happening as an incline is the growth of car sharing, where you can basically use a car for an hour and don't have to pay for gas, insurance, that sort of stuff. And then the rise of what we call ride sharing or ride sourcing services like taxis, Uber, and Lyft, because people don't even want to drive. They just want to be taken from point A to point B. That's also brought the rise of bike sharing as well. So we're seeing all of these things now where public transit's more effective because more people are using it in the central city areas. The land use has changed. Vancouver's a fantastic example of a lot more housing in the center areas. So these things are all starting to change, and as baby boomers age, they're choosing to move back into cities, into city centers. And so you're creating this perfect mix of enough density and concentration of people that now make public transport and all those other sharing services much more viable. So that's definitely where we're heading, because you're seeing it happen all over the world.
Interesting, because my problem with public transport has always been that it doesn't go where I want to go when I want to go there.
Yeah, so the thing is with public transport is that, people want it to come to their doorstep and take them to their office place, and that's called a car.
Yes.
And so if you live in the suburbs, or if you live in a low-density area, and you have basically have a driveway, if you expect a bus to come into your driveway and pick you up and take you to work, that's called a car. But there are options. There isn't that. It's great to know that now that there's much more technology-enabled software, there's opportunities now to do real-time carpooling matching. So you can live in a beautiful little house, somewhere outside of the city centre, and know that if you wanted to, you could actually pick somebody up, take them to work with you, so you can reduce the cost of the shared ride, or not drive and have someone take you. And it doesn't have to happen every day, but even if we did that once or twice a week, we actually wouldn't have any congestion in our metropolitan area, just by switching out 1 or 2 trips a week, by not driving on the main roads. It's that sensitive. We have this thing called we have a terrible holiday, but it's the Columbus Day holiday, but it's one of those holidays that's not required for everything. When there's a 5% drop in traffic that day, all traffic systems work really well. So we're not asking, it doesn't mean that everybody has to get out of their car and get onto transit. Just 5% have to shift 1 day a week, and we'll notice that all things kind of balance out. It's that sensitive. It's just really exciting.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then where do you think small and large communities should focus their attention, their energy to improve mobility and air quality and health?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that could take 2 hours to answer. I'll try and answer in a couple of minutes. But I think for small communities, they have a very different set of challenges and opportunities versus larger communities. So if a community is more than 100,000 people and it has a fairly well-established downtown or even a shopping centre that's fairly big, that's where the jobs are nearby. That's fairly straightforward in terms of improving access to those centres via better public transport or private transport. It doesn't have to be public, it can be privately run. But just something that actually will bring a number of people to a certain place to create that spine. And then having more access to car sharing, bicycle facilities, and then more carpooling, because I think that's really the key. If you live in a suburban environment, it's really hard to leap from that into fixed route buses, because it just doesn't sometimes work with the layout of the land. But carpooling works really well, and so there are apps out there and companies that are actually matching people real time. So as a community of that size, with a suburban style community, that's really where they can focus on, but more importantly is focusing on their land use. So bringing in more housing around that shopping centre, bringing more housing in that office park, so that we can shorten those distances between working and sleeping. And then you'll see a big air quality benefit and a big change in noise as well by doing those things. Smaller communities have very different challenges in that they may not have an economic program that keeps the town vital. So they really need to develop their economic plan first. And are they going to be a tourist center-based economy? Are they going to be a produce-based economy? Are they going to be a industry-based,
a one-horse town?
Yeah, what are they going to be? So once they need to figure out what they want to be. If they're going to be a commuter satellite to a bigger city, then that has a different set of transportation choices. But if you're going to try and become more of a tourist-friendly town, then really making sure that your main street and your shopping streets are traffic calmed. They've got beautiful sidewalks with trees and seating areas to make it really inviting, to focus on the businesses, to spruce up their awnings and their fronts. That creates a real working environment. And then focus the parking management. So making sure that the parking is tailored to visitors and to people who are shopping in that area, so that they can access the area fairly quickly. If it's a concentrated small town, they might be able to provide some sort of circulation transit service, where it might be like a 12 to 15 passenger small little van or bus that can circulate around there and maybe connect to a regional train station or regional park and ride service. Those are sort of things that would actually work. And then most importantly for a small town is bicycling, because most towns are maybe 2 or 3 Ks wide or 4 Ks wide, which is perfect for cycling. And if they're fairly flat or near a riverbed or something, it's perfect for cycling. And it's great for active mobility, because seniors love cycling. They just feel scared to cycle because the roads are too fast. So the biggest piece for both communities, small and large, is to focus on pedestrian safety first. Traffic calm your streets, bring the speeds down, especially in the concentrated areas where there's hospitals or shopping districts. And then from there, you can layer on these services as it makes sense. But I always say, slow down everything first, focus on walking and bicycling, and then manage the parking, and then the transit makes sense.
Okay,
Very, like, these are not novel things, these
No.
are standard stuff, but we just got to look at it and go back to the basics.
So in terms of policy,
Yeah.
and the number of car owners that there still are,
Yes.
what policies do we need to make these improvements?
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of them, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on who's in charge. There's just no one fix. There's a whole string of fixes that need to happen. The key is to improve affordability and affordable access, and most people now don't feel the transport system is affordable. It's not equitable. You have to own a car and you have to maintain a car, and I don't know what the exact figures are in Canada, but I guess it's similar to the US. A new car, or someone who's just recently bought a car, with cost of gas, insurance, maintenance, wear and tear, etc., it's about $500-600 a month. And
Yeah,
that's a
probably
lot of
close.
money. That's a lot of money for someone who's on a fixed or limited income, who's retiring, etc., or who's entering the school or workforce as a student. That's a big burden to have. Plus, there's a risk of getting a car collision, which is more than likely these days because there's so many on the road. So the best thing we can do from a policy perspective is figure out ways to provide more choices that allow people not to have to feel burdened to have to own and operate their car. That being said, there are certain communities, the way they're designed, where they're designed for the car. So the policies to put in place would be a commuting ordinance that allows and encourages carpooling, and to actually tie that carpooling ordinance to businesses. So as a local government, engage the businesses nearby who employ more than 10 or 15 people and figure out who's coming from where, and are there ways we can do shared carpooling. The second thing that you can do as a city town centre is your parking. Look at your parking management policies, making sure that the parking is not designed for quick turnover, but actually for people who want to come and visit, shop, play, go to appointments, etc. And then really minimize the employee parking. And then put in policies where you encourage car sharing as part of new development, and put in car sharing on existing parking lots. And the car sharing companies will come because they want access to the community. And then, depending on the size of the community, invest in protected bicycle facilities, because in all of our research that we've done as practitioners working in cities, people will use bicycles when the lanes are protected, and when they're protected like they are in Vancouver, where there's a barrier of some sort, then you'll see mum with kids riding their bicycles to school. The grandparents will actually chaperone the children to the shopping village for the morning. They can go to the doctor's appointment now by bicycle. And what you've done by that small investment, you've now made it so affordable, because the cost of a bicycle is a couple of $100. And now a senior person or a student or a mother and a child, that's all their outlay is, for those small errands that they have to do. And then for the larger commute errands, carpooling can make the commute more affordable. It can also make the jobs more accessible. People who can't afford to have a car are restricted of which jobs they can apply for. So as a local government, focusing on creating a carpooling or a van pooling service that is tied with the employers will actually bring people to jobs and actually improve their economic activities. And I think when you add all those things together, obviously better transit, money for that, and I know you guys are going for a new measure, and good luck to you guys, because that's really important to improve that mobility. When you see these things work together, when you have better streets for walking, safer streets for bicycling, parking management, and then you tie in public transport, once the land uses are working in a way that actually makes sense, you start seeing this amazing thing happens. Like we've seen, economic activity just starts increasing. More local businesses become more viable. People walk more, which means they're more active. All of the public health issues about safety and collisions and hospital visitations, they start to normalize. And so everybody starts seeing a win-win. And people who drive, because again, we don't need everybody to change, just 5% or 6%. Everybody who's driving, their normal commute becomes more bearable as well, and they start realizing, do I need to do this anymore, or can I also shift as well? So they're the things that you can see happening.
Wow, things to think about.
Yeah.
As a car owner, things to think about.
Yeah.
Very definitely.
I always say, as a car owner, if you're a car owner, ask yourself this: is it worth me spending my $600 a month for a vehicle that's parked 22 and a half hours a day, and that every single trip I take is at least $10 out of my pocket? are there other ways I can make those trips? Whether it's a 5-block trip to the supermarket or a 10-kilometer commute to work, each one of those costs at least $10. Are there other things I can do? Can I have things delivered to me online? Can I avoid that trip altogether? Can I carpool with my friend? Can we go out together to a restaurant with some friends together and just use one car and save on the parking and the gas? Once we start thinking about these things, we become what I call a conscious commuter. And if you become a conscious commuter, all of a sudden all your trip choices become that much more apparent. And all that outlay becomes more of a, why am I spending all this money? You know, I could have invested in a holiday somewhere, going to a warmer climate for a week or something. Because those who do that save on average about $5,000 a year.
Oh, no, that's not fair.
What could you do with $5,000, right? So could you invest it in something else? Could you get a holiday? Could you do something you want to do, learn a new course, buy things that you've always wanted to buy, you know, upgrade your kitchen, whatever, all these things every year, right? So these are the real choices that we make. And so there isn't that, try and think beyond, do I have to own my car for all these reasons? It's like, no, I need to access all these places. Are there ways that I can save doing that? And
do that without 4 wheels and a motor.
Exactly. And if you start that conversation, it's like that, you know, when someone wants to lose weight, the first thing they say is, okay, what choices can I make to not eat certain things and do more exercise? Just having that conversation gets the cogs spinning, and they look at their diet for the week, and then they look at what they're doing, and just adding a bit more walking, a bit more cycling. You know, the Lung Association talks about stuff all the time. So they always say, just do something small and start. I think the same thing's for transportation. Just start doing something small and then build it up over time, and you'll see that all of a sudden you're a fit commuter as well.
You're obviously committed to what you believe.
Absolutely. I practice it as well. I don't have
That's
a car.
excellent.
I don't drive a car, but I use cars. But I also am fortunate. I live in a city, and so when you live in a city or in a very small town, and everything you do is in that city or in that small town, those choices become apparent. But if you, because of choices that we've made, if we've chosen to live out in a far-flung suburb, and we work in another far-flung suburb, then the choices are very limited. You know, but even saying that, the work trip is only 20% of all of our trips. So the other 80%, is the shopping center within a 2 or 3 Ks from where you live? If that's the case, there's ways to get there. You know.
I will admit the worst thing I ever did for my level of fitness was buy a car.
My car, yeah. Yeah, it's addictive. You just
Yeah.
use it for everything. So, yeah.
Well, thank you.
You're
You've
welcome.
given people a lot of things to think about.
Good.